Welcome to another edition of VisionCast Network. Today's special guest is Eddy Green. Eddy is a brilliant young man who works with single mothers seeking self-awareness to help them overcome the fear of failing their own children. So welcome, Eddy. Great to see you again.
Great to see you too, Christian.
So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you target this group of people? And there's a high need for this. There's a lot of single mothers. So tell us about your story, where you came from, and about your life, where you live, etc.
So, why I decided to help single mothers is because I grew up with a single mom. My
Hmm.
mother was married to a drug addict and alcoholic. That was my father.
Hmm.
And he wasn't around a whole lot. But when
Okay.
he was, it was a pretty unstable household.
Yes.
And I witnessed my mother go through not only the battles of dealing with her own self doubt and fear of failing us, but having to deal with a drug addict and alcoholic husband who would force himself back into her life.
Hmm.
She had very little support. She didn't quite know who she was. And it was a very hard thing to watch, even as a little boy.
Yeah.
I recognized her struggle and that things were not the same for us as they were for other people.
Hmm. So what do you mean by that? Things were different for you. Care to elaborate on that?
So when we went to school, for example, parent teacher conferences or just even going to friends' house, most of them had their parents together. They
Yeah.
had that support, they had that father role model or dynamic. And my little brother and I and my older sister, we didn't have that. We rarely saw our dad,
Okay.
and any memory that we did have of him coming back, we can't even quite remember. At least my speaking for myself.
Okay. So that sounds very difficult, and it must have left a real impression on young Eddy.
Yep. Growing up, it was a struggle because I always really like, and I don't use this word a lot, but I hated my father.
Okay.
Very strong hate for that man. And funny enough, though, as I was growing up, I actually started becoming the problem. And without that male role model, you kind of find whatever you can to, I guess the way to put it is become your own man.
Okay.
And I just started getting into bad groups and hanging out with the wrong crowd. And I started becoming more like my dad, even though I really did not like him at all. I ended up getting expelled from a whole school district. I was arrested 6 times by the time I was 16.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of effect it really had on me.
Sounds like you were deeply affected by the your early childhood, and that reflected in your own behavior in a way that you started doing what it is that you saw your dad do in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, which is really crazy because, like I said, I had a very strong hate for that man. And yet somehow I was being molded or growing into another version of him.
So it sounds like you were like
Yeah.
repeating a cycle. And how did you break free from that cycle? Because obviously you're not in that cycle now. How did you break free of that cycle?
You know, it's another one of those just breakthrough moments, you know. Um, I was in a cell. This was the big one, right? I got
Okay.
arrested for the sixth time, and this was it. This was
Okay.
if I don't change, I'm going to be going to juvie and then eventually be going to jail
Okay.
because yeah, they found a lot of stuff on me. They connected me to some people, and I had to sit in a cell for 2 whole days because I was a minor at that point. So my mom could have came and got me, but she did me the biggest favor by
Hmm.
not doing that. And I had to sit in there for 2 days and self-reflect.
Okay.
And I had nothing but the wooden bench, the cold floors, and the
Hmm.
company of the toilet
Hmm.
to sit and think for 2 whole days and
Hmm.
reflect on the kind of man I was becoming. And I had to ask myself some questions like, is this all there is? And the one that really stands out to me is life's got to be better than this.
Okay. Life's got to be better.
Yeah.
You know. And what did you hear inside of yourself during that self-reflective time in that cell, that cold cell?
That I'm meant for more, that this isn't who I wanted to be when I was a child, watching my mom go through the struggles,
Okay.
and that I had so much more capability than this,
Okay.
so much more potential. And I
And now,
didn't, sorry,
and now I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
and I just didn't want to go down the same route as my dad.
You didn't want to go down that. So the aversion that you felt towards your dad really fueled you
Yeah.
and probably intensified as you realized that you were becoming the man that you in some way, shape, or form kind of despised.
Mhm.
And then sitting in the cell, that cold cell, um, you realized that you were made for more and that you needed to do something different.
Mhm.
How did that how did that change your relationship with your mother?
It didn't right away.
Yeah.
I had to put in the work, I had to
Good.
live by some character traits and change my values. And,
Okay.
over time, I built her trust again
Okay.
and proved to her through evidence of my actions and behavior that I was a different boy.
She sounds like an amazing woman.
She is.
Yeah. Do you remember that point at which you made that shift, that change, and you regained the trust? Do you remember that day?
No particular moment comes out to me. My
Yeah.
mom has always been a huge supporter of me, and she wanted me to succeed and she wanted me to live a better life. So not one moment stands out, but
She sounds like she has been a really consistent um, presence for good in your life,
oh yeah.
even despite all of the challenges that she went through in her marriage relationship with your father.
Yeah.
There's no one moment really that stands out. It's like, oh, I've turned the corner. I'm curious. Is there a moment that you reflect on that where you realize, okay, this is it. I made the decision. I'm out. I'm going down the track to where I desire to be, and I know for sure if there's no turning back around? Is there a moment or a series of things that you can reflect on that come to mind with that regard, in that regard?
Yeah, like in the sense of a moment where there's no turning back now.
Yeah,
It was just that day, like that day in the cell, and when I got
maybe
out,
so.
it was just there was no other choice. I had to break through. If I didn't, then I was going to be in jail, hanging out with dangerous people, and becoming like my dad.
Yes.
And that's the moment where I couldn't turn back, because if I did, I could potentially die or never see my family again. Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Sounds like a sobering moment.
oh, it was intense. Like for, I don't know if it was because I was 16, but that moment is just etched in my mind forever.
Yeah. So that's a good reference point of this is not something that I'm going to do again. No, I don't want this. I do not want that.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Right.
Oh, for sure.
Good for you. That takes a lot of courage. I imagine that there were temptations along the way after that, or was it pretty much all smooth sailing?
Oh God, no, absolutely not. I life for everyone, as we know, is a roller coaster,
Yep.
and I moved past one demon, and then more came towards me. Right,
Yep.
like after that, for myself, it was overeating. I
Right.
switched to just over consuming food, and I gained probably about, it must have been like 70 pounds or something like
Right.
that. And
Mm.
it was like 255 pounds. And then it's kind of the same story. I realized at that moment, it was at one point in that time, it was time to change. And then I got really into the gym and working out, into fitness, and then,
Yep.
overcame that demon. And then some of the temptations for consuming some narcotics, definitely was a bit tough. The crowd wasn't, because one of the most sobering moments in my life was when this all went down. No one was around. No one reached out to me. I had nothing to offer them, nothing to give to them. And after this final time of getting arrested, I would say about 3 months went by without even a cricket. And then someone reached out and said, "Hey, can I grab some of this off of you?"
Mm.
So that really taught me a lot about the kind of people I was hanging out with, kind of friends I was making, and what real friends are.
Beautiful. So, where do you get this tremendous strength from? Do you mind talking about that? Where do you get this resolve? Where does this resolve come from? It's clear that you have a tremendous amount.
I think a huge part of it is from my mom. I
Mhm.
think my mom really showed me what true strength and resilience is.
Yeah.
Part of it too is, I do think that some of it has to do with my upbringing. I grew up with a brother and a sister, and I was the middle child. And my parents always felt like there was something off about me. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was a child, and my parents would take me to specialists because I was different.
Okay.
I would zone out a lot. And during this period of my life, I also really struggled with school. And
Okay.
so always went into programs where I needed extra help.
Yep.
And I think they called it back in the 90s a learning disability.
Okay.
But I had to deal with a bunch of challenges back then on how to overcome that,
Mhm.
how to learn better, how to actually get better at school, and overcome this feeling of something being wrong with me,
Mm.
because that's how I was really felt in school and kind of felt at home too.
Yeah. You were different than the mainstream, than the masses.
hmm And I realize now that I was just a creative kid. And what I would do that my parents got so concerned about was, yeah, was
Creative kid right here. This is a creative kid right here. Creative man. Still a creative man.
and what I would do a lot of the times that really concerned my dad was I would zone out a lot.
Hmm.
And it's funny because, as I'm sure you know, when you get distance from these memories or from these circumstances and you look back and you say to yourself, like, wow, that was actually really such a gift.
Yeah.
Because now I realize that I wasn't just daydreaming. No, I was a creative kid. I was creating in my head. I was
Yeah.
problem solving or generating ideas, or I loved movies so much that I was like literally screenwriting and directing and acting in movies in my head. Like, and so I look back on that and it's just amazing because now I realize that that is a massive skill of mine.
Mm. How do you use that skill and others in working with single mothers seeking self-awareness, overcoming the fear of failing their children?
And I use it to help them figure out what it is that they want,
Okay.
what's their vision.
Yep.
It's one of the skills from exactly what I told you about just a moment ago is
Yep.
that I have this skill of really seeing the big picture and crafting visions.
Hmm.
And so I help them by figuring out what it is they want and kind of where they came from and how they can use that to
Mm.
create the future, the compelling future, or the vision, the direction they want to go.
So it sounds like you guide them. Correct me if this is accurate. Sounds like you guide them in understanding where they've come from and the challenges that they've had and the benefits of those challenges and how they can use that as fuel to get to where it is that they desire to go. Did I hear that correctly?
Right. Yes.
So the past is a blessing.
Oh, it always is. I don't know about yourself, but I feel like I wouldn't change anything that happened to me.
No,
Not a thing.
exactly. Not a darn thing. What would you say has been your biggest blessing?
So I would say that I don't know if I would call it a blessing, but something that happened to me that really, besides that moment when I was 16, that really changed my life
Mhm.
was when I lost my friend to pancreatic cancer.
Mm.
And the reason why, when you say, what's your biggest blessing? And I think of this is because of the lesson that it taught me. This friend of mine was a very close friend, and he meant so much to me. And I don't know if you know about pancreatic cancer, but I think it's one of the few that comes out of nowhere and
Yeah.
comes on quick, and
It's
it
a
moves
short,
so fast.
short fuse. Yes.
Yeah. And it's a blessing because He was my sister's fiance. We've been
Mm,
10 years, and it taught me a really valuable lesson because when his cancer got diagnosed as terminal,
hmm
he he realized that he spent a lot of time on things that he thought were important,
mm,
but really weren't, or not as important at least as his relationships, relationship with my sister, his friendships, and he regretted um, focusing more on his going to school and
mm.
his passion. And it's a blessing because it taught me just the moment we're kind of on our deathbed. You know what I mean? It's the people that it's how we make people feel. It's the people that we love. It's who we affect and who affects us. And, he regretted putting off asking my sister to marry him for too long,
Mm,
not making it a priority. And,
mm.
that was such a massive blessing and lesson in my life because now I'm an uncle to a beautiful niece and two nephews now. Um, and my sister's relationship, our relationship is just, it's so close. Like we are a team.
Yeah.
And yeah, and my friendships with my close knit of friends, it's just we talk all the time. I make sure to tell
Mm.
them. I don't even care if it makes anyone uncomfortable. I tell them I love them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I so many moments during the day and a lot of times during the week, I will think about death and I will ask myself questions like, what if I die tomorrow?
Yeah.
Like, how would I feel? Who would I tell that I love them? And
Yeah.
I reach out to these people and I tell them that
Yeah.
because the last thing I want is for my family and friends, and especially my niece and my two nephews, is for them to not have me at least send them a voice note or a video or call them and say, I love you guys so much. And then I'm gone the next moment.
Wow. So you have packed years of wisdom into your current age, whatever that may be. I
Yeah.
hope I hope you hear that. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm realizing some of the parallels in my own life and how long it took me to gain that wisdom and that understanding. So I just wanted to share that with you and believe that your message is a powerful and a potent one, and that as a servant to humanity, 'cause I know you have the heart of a servant. Um, we're fortunate that you're still here and that you made the decisions that you made. So thank you for that. For all those sacrifices that you've made that no one will ever know about or need know about, just thank you for that. I know it can be a long and lonely road.
Thank you, my friend.
You're very welcome. What is one thing you'd like to tell the listeners? One like beautiful Eddie Green nugget of wisdom that you'd like to drop on the scene here for people to take away that would improve the quality of their life.
I mean, there's so many, but
Pick your favorite.
it would come down to the lesson that I learned from my friend. It's that at the end of the day, it's about how we make people feel.
You
It's about
know,
the relationships that we have.
you know,
Don't put off asking that person to marry you when because the timing doesn't feel right, but you love them so much, or asking that person out on a date, or
yeah,
telling that friend that even though you haven't talked for a while, or you've both been so busy, hey, I've been thinking about you. And just want you to know that I've been busy and you mean a lot to me. And I'm proud of you.
Wow. Beautiful. Those are great words because you never know. You never know when you're going to go.
Yeah.
You never know. Um, where can people find out more about you, Eddy?
Well, I'm on all the platforms. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You just search out my name, Eddy Green, you'll be able to find me. And I also have a blog called The Growth Gazette on my website, Sage Mode Coaching. So that's sagemodecoaching.com. And I'm always writing articles on personal development or self improvement to help people along the way.
Awesome, young man. Thank you for spending time with me today. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate you. Appreciate watching you. I remember when we first met about 6, 8, 7 months ago, and how you've just blossomed and flourished into this heart-centered, highly compassionate, loving man. I just feel that come through you. Just, you're present, and that's so nice. So thank you for spending some time. I appreciate it.
No problem, my friend. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're very welcome, Eddy. Take care.
You too.
Blessings.